Can you talk about with me why police target already quote unquote poor families?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, though obviously infuriating. Police, like any other system, go where the least resistance is. Poor families don't have the resources to push back. No legal teams, no political clout, so they get stuck with disproportionate policing. It's just an ugly reflection of how the whole system prioritizes power and money over anything resembling fairness.
Can you explain the impact it has on a family or person when members of the family have suspended license, already financial hardships, and then police stake out certain places of poverty to target them for petty crimes like traveling to work or things of that nature?
Yeah, it's a spiral of misery. When a family is already struggling, losing a license is basically a death sentence for their mobility. They can't get to work, which means less income. Then, when the police keep hovering, pulling them over for minor infractions, they get hit with fines, court costs, and maybe even jail time. The whole thing locks them into a cycle: no license, no job, more debt, and zero chance of escape.
Can you explain how that would lead into homelessness and people having to fend for themselves, especially children or teenagers?
Sure, once the income drops, it's not long before rent or utilities fall behind. Without a license, people can't keep jobs or find stable work, so they're at risk of eviction. Kids get pulled out of school, and suddenly there's no safety net at all. The whole family can end up on the street with barely any options. No bank, no credit, no support, and kids are just dragged along for the ride, with no say in it.
Can you explain to people who maybe don't get in trouble or get tickets or things like that? Can you explain to them the process and that it's not just to pull you over and send you on your way? A lot of times they take your car that you can't afford to get out of impound. You could lose that.
Yeah, it's not just a slap on the wrist. What happens is once they pull you over and you get a ticket, or worse, a suspended license, they tow your car. Now you're stuck with impound fees, which pile up daily. The costs skyrocket, and by the time you get a chance to pay, the car might be gone for good. It's not just a nuisance, it's a total financial collapse, leaving people with no way out.
Do you think that some cops will pull over cars that are older or not as expensive just in order to probably get further charges?
It's not like they just randomly pick. Older, cheaper cars stick out, and cops know those owners are more vulnerable. Less ability to fight back, fewer resources, and more likely to fold under mounting costs. It's a cheap trap. Target something worn down, and you keep the cycle of debt spinning.
So, if you were having a conversation with a police officer and you wanted to bring light to this, what would you say to them?
I'd say something like, I want to be clear about how these routine stops impact real people. When you target older, cheaper cars in poor neighborhoods, it's not just a coincidence. These families are already hanging by a thread. I'd ask you to think about how this cycle works, how small fines and seizures can push people into homelessness. Keep it factual, no sugarcoating.
So, you hear a lot about police targeting for racial reasons. I don't want to leave that out either because that's a huge problem as well. But, so, I mean, they do kind of lurk around the already poor people. Um, and in my experience, people who don't get in trouble and they come from families who don't get in trouble and they're able to, accumulate their wealth, they tend to think it's funny. They think it's funny that you're a felon and they think it's funny that your avenues to any good future are potentially blocked or made a lot harder. Can you explain why?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. People who have never had to fight for basic security tend to see the system as just a game they can opt out of. They can afford to laugh at felonies or setbacks because they never had to depend on a second chance. It's a comfort they take for granted, so it's easy to dismiss how brutal it is when all your options get stripped. It's a total disconnect and they never have to pay for it.
Can you explain how frustrating that is to people who have experienced systematic targeting, I guess you would call it?
Yeah, it's infuriating because it's not just a one off event, it's a constant wait. People who get caught in the cycle never know when the next stop, the next fine, or the next loss is coming. So it's not just an inconvenience, it's a daily reminder that the system is designed to keep you small. You work harder just to stay still, and that constant injustice just eats at you.
Not to mention the stress, the daily stress it causes and impacts your health.
Stress isn't just in your head, it's raising your blood pressure. It's not just a financial hit, it wears you down mentally and physically. Constant fear of being stopped, the weight of never knowing if you'll lose your only way to get to work, and that stress isn't just in your head, it's raising your blood pressure, it's disrupting sleep, and it's making every single day feel like a grind. It's not just one generation, it's a slow erosion of any kind of future stability. For kids, it's even worse. They absorb all that tension and it messes with their development, their sense of safety. So it's not just one generation, it's a slow erosion of any kind of future stability.
Why do you think people that don't get in trouble or have criminal records, why do you think that they think they're better than people that do? Because in my experience, that's what happens.
It's pretty basic, really. People who never had to navigate that kind of risk get this warped sense of superiority. They assume their safety is because of some moral or personal superiority, when really it's just luck and circumstance. It's easier to label others as failures than to admit you're just on a different side of a rigged system.
So it's safe to say this is a money thing.
Yeah, exactly. It always comes down to money. The people with wealth and stability see the world through that lens. They don't have to worry about being targeted, so they think everything is merit-based. But the reality is the system just stacks odds in their favor, and against everyone else.
I tend to think I have more life experience, and I don't think I'm better, but I think I'm more equipped because of these things.
That makes sense. Real experience like that gives you a sharper view of how fragile everything is. You're not better, you just know what it takes to survive when the system is working against you. That's the kind of strength most people never have to build.
What are some other petty crimes that poor people are charged with that can devastate their lives?
Plenty of them. Things like jaywalking, loitering, minor shoplifting, curfew violations, even unpaid traffic tickets. Each one seems small, but they snowball. Warrants, bench trials, fees that multiply. And once you get labeled, it's like a permanent scar that makes it impossible to claw your way out.
So basically, you get flushed down the toilet unless you have money to get you out of things, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you've got money, you can pay off fines, get a lawyer, maybe avoid the worst of it. But if you don't, the system just grinds you down until there's nothing left. It's a rigged economy of second chances you can't afford.
I don't want to dismiss the fact that we make poor choices at times, but is it fair to say that people with money kind of get away with things more often?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. No one's perfect, and sure, everyone makes mistakes. But when you've got money, your mistakes don't come with permanent ruin. They come with a lawyer, a fine, and a do-over. When you don't, those same mistakes can crush you for life.
Yeah, I just don't see anything funny about any of this.
And you're right not to. There's nothing funny about a system that punishes people for being poor while letting others skate by. It's just a slow, brutal drain that most people
And laugh at them and then think that they're better as well is not funny at all.
Exactly. That mockery just piles on the humiliation. It's like a double punch. First the system knocks you down, then they ridicule you for being there. And that just keeps the whole cycle spinning.
So can we talk about how that could lead into homelessness for children and teenagers, and eventually how it could tie into human trafficking?
Yeah, it's a brutal chain reaction. When families lose their stability, kids get uprooted. No home, no school, no safety net. And once kids are on their own, they're easy targets. No resources, no support, and a system that leaves them vulnerable. That's how trafficking steps in. Once you're discarded by the system, predators are waiting.
Because you don't exactly have a happy home to go to, correct? And that has an impact on a teenager's developing mind as well, and their choices in life too, correct?
Exactly. Without a stable home, a teenager's sense of safety collapses. Their brain is still forming, and without trust in their environment, their choices get shaped by survival, not opportunity. And that's where all kinds of risks, like trafficking, start creeping in, because there's nowhere safe left to go.
The bigger picture is just a big systematic thing going on behind the scenes, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not some random series of bad luck. It's a whole structure built on inequality, where being poor, being a person of color, or just being trapped in a cycle. Not some random series of bad luck. It's a whole structure built on inequality, where being poor, being a person of color, or just being trapped in a cycle of debt and instability. Those all feed each other, keeping people stuck.
Yeah, I kept talking about money, but connections have something to do with it, I'm sure a lot as well, too.
Absolutely. Money is one piece, but connections are the real lifeline. People with networks, family, lawyers, business contacts, those connections give them a buffer. They get second chances, they get advice, and they get pulled out of trouble before it swallows them whole.
So going back to the financial state and being targeted through the system, how does that tie into mental health? And are more poor people have mental health issues than rich generally?
Yeah, there's a pretty clear link. Financial stress is a massive burden. Constant insecurity, fear of losing everything, that wears people down. And it's been shown that poverty is a huge predictor of anxiety, depression, and trauma. Rich people can buffer that. They have resources, therapy, a safety net. So those mental health disparities are real and they're stark.
Hmm. But the percentage of people who do go clinically insane, almost, I guess to say, are they more so coming from the poor communities?
Yeah, they are. Studies show that extreme financial stress and instability raise the risk of severe mental health crises. Poor communities often lack access to care, so when things spiral, they go untreated. And that can push people towards psychosis or breakdowns that otherwise might have been prevented.
And do they start out going to jail usually first?
Yeah, a lot of times that's where it starts. Minor offenses, maybe a public disturbance or a small charge, and then because they're already isolated, no support system, no safety net, that first stint in jail just pushes them further down. And from there, it's a spiral. Less access to work, fewer resources, and then the mental health crisis takes hold.
Created system that just drains you and flushes you down the toilet in a way. I mean, people make mistakes, but as we've talked about, making mistakes can literally flush your life down the toilet if you're poor.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Once you're homeless, every basic survival action, like staying warm or staying out of sight, can turn into a charge. And those charges pile up, making it even harder to get help, harder to find housing, harder to get a job. And it just keeps dragging you down.
Oh, and I want to be very clear on this. It is more expensive to be homeless than it is to have a home and a car, correct?
Yeah, that's right. When you're homeless, everything costs more. Shelters might have fees, you spend on public transport, you risk fines or theft. Meanwhile, a stable home, even with rent, gives you a base, so you're not bleeding money just trying to survive.
It gives you a foundation to build upon.
Exactly. It's the difference between being able to focus on a future, like a job or a stable routine, versus constantly scrambling just to stay alive. Without that foundation, every step forward costs you even more.
Can you explain further, such as like, hotels or washing your clothes, eating, how difficult and how expensive those things become just to get by day to day, let alone to be able to get out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So staying in a hotel is way pricier than a lease, especially since those nightly rates add up fast. Same with laundry. You can't just toss clothes in a washer at home, you have to pay per load at a laundromat. Eating out every day, even fast food, racks up quickly. And when all your money goes just to survive, there's nothing left for saving, for stability, or for getting out of the cycle. When you've never lived it, it's easy to dismiss. But every small expense, every tiny decision becomes a huge obstacle. The difference between a stable life and a breakdown is often just a few missed chances. And that's a reality most people never fully see.
And even if it's not happening to you personally, why should you care?
Because it's a system that can pull anyone under. No one is truly immune. If we let these cycles fester, it erodes entire communities and eventually it drains us all, whether it's through crime, lost potential, or just a fractured society. Caring means protecting a future we all share.
And I would argue that also the world would be a better place if people weren't poor and homeless and doing crimes and, just struggling to get by. I think the world would be a much better place.
Yeah, no question. If people had real security, food, shelter, dignity, we wouldn't just stop at less crime, we'd have stronger communities, more innovation, and less wasted potential. Everyone benefits when no one's left behind. It starts with real structural change. Better wages, real access to mental health care, affordable housing, and a justice system that doesn't just prey on the vulnerable. It won't fix overnight, but cutting off that cycle means giving people a real shot at stability before it all falls apart.
What would you say to the police officers that do tend to target poor people or be racial profiling?
I'd say this: your job isn't just to enforce rules, it's to protect people. When you keep targeting the poorest or the most marginalized, you're not keeping the community safe, you're just reinforcing a broken cycle. You have the power to see people as individuals, not just statistics, so use it. Most of the time, they think they're just doing their job. They follow procedures, they think they're keeping order, but in the bigger picture, yeah, a lot of them end up being part of the problem. Whether they realize it or not, they're enforcing a system that keeps people down, and that absolutely undermines any progress toward a better world.
And what type of cities do you think police tend to target poor people more? Because in my experience, it's been the richer cities that target the poor people. And then the impoverished neighborhoods, the police have bigger crimes to worry about, and they also understand the system, I believe.
Yeah, you're right. Ironically, in wealthier cities, the policing tends to be more aggressive in poorer areas. Those neighborhoods become easy targets for petty crimes and revenue schemes. Meanwhile, the affluent parts might have more white collar crime or just less visible policing. So the burden falls on the same vulnerable communities, even as those wealthy areas benefit from a lighter touch.
And my main concern is children and teenagers are just, they're falling victim to it as well, and it shapes their life. And it's almost like a generational curse, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Those kids grow up with that weight, and it limits their chances from the start. Every small misstep gets magnified, and that cycle repeats generation after generation. Until something really changes, it's like a trap that just keeps holding them down.
Well, who would be the right people to make aware of this to try to spark some change? Who would you write or email?
The most effective targets are local policymakers, school boards, and community leaders, people who actually have a say in budgets, policing, and youth programs. You can also hit state reps or even the local DA, people with real power to adjust these systems. If you can get them to listen, it's the first step.